Hello, so today I'm going to be talking about A Dance with Dragons, which is George R. R. Martin's fifth book in his A Song of Ice and Fire series, aka the best series ever created. Off the bat, I know people are probably going to assume they know the stuff that is taking place in these books because they have watched the television adapted version, but I can't stress enough how big of a change in directions that they each went, whether that be the plot, the characters, their morals, their philosophies, just everything. So I'm not even going to spend time talking about that, just know they're very different. Due to the series' graphic language and war and violence, I would say it's probably best for 16-year-olds, but according to commonsense.org, they say it's recommended for 17 and older, while they also state that parents say 14 years and older and kids say 13 years and older. As you can see from this chart that is comparing the lengths of some of the most classic literature and this series, it is very long, so if anything, I think it's the length, which is why it is not as popular with high school students than its content. To give you the backdrop of the first four novels, I'm going to do the best I can to try and summarize them. So essentially, it's about the country of Westeros, and these maps are on the first pages of each of the books, and they're comprised of these seven kingdoms, and each of them are players in the Game of Thrones, particularly the Iron Throne. So at first, there's a king who was overthrown because he was very violent, and he's referred to as the Mad King. So his daughter went into hiding while he was replaced by a king from another kingdom, and all was fine and good for decades until that king is killed by his queen, Cersei, because he was about to discover that his heirs were actually products of incest between the queen and her twin brother. So, as Queen Cersei's sons rule without a true claim to the throne, a war between five kings break out because some kingdoms find out the truth and want to rebel and become independent, while others believe that they are entitled to the throne and they have a stronger claim, obviously, since Cersei's sons do not have a true claim. So these first four novels, it's just full of deception and deceit and changing of allies to improve their own statuses. What's funny about this is the how these first four books center on this war of the five kings. In reality, Queen Cersei is the one winning the game all along, and each of the five players are not exactly the key players that pose a threat because Cersei, although her son is the face of the ruler, she is the one making all of these power plays. But going into A Dance with Dragons, the book shifts into the War of the Three Queens. And at this point, now only the key major players are left in the game, and Queen Cersei is honestly defeating her enemies one by one ruthlessly, but her son, who is king, had to marry to bridge some alliances with all these wars breaking out, and now she was never the face, but now she doesn't even have that power because the queen, with the title now, is very ambitious. So Cersei feels threatened by her depleting authority. Tensions rise between Cersei and her son's new wife, so the actual queen. There is also a bigger problem happening. There is the war being set up by the original king's, who was overthrown's daughter, who has been liberating slaves in foreign countries who are devoted to seeing her on the Iron Throne, and she has hatched three dragons, which was thought to be extinct at this moment in history. While everything seems to be about the Iron Throne, it's actually pretty irrelevant though, because we get these glimpses of the Ice Walkers, and it's usually only a couple chapters in each of the books, but at this point in the series, A Dance with Dragons, we understand that one day they are going to attack everyone living. So we know at one point all these key figures are going to have to join together, but they are just so focused on these power struggles that they're unconcerned with a threat that is being posed to all of humanity. Something I found very interesting was George R. R. Martin talked about in an interview that he used the Ice Walkers to symbolize global warming, because while countries are so focused on materialistics and title and power, we are unconcerned with global warming, and that one day we know is going to come back for all of us. I think there are 3 parts that set apart this series from any other literature out there, and that is the way the book is designed through point of view, the genre, and the symbolism in these series. For starters, each chapter is in a character's point of view, and this makes it very hard to dislike a character, and Martin does this very intricately because it really blurs the lines between right and wrong, protagonist and antagonist, and good and evil. Oftentimes in books, there is just a clear line between characters you root for and the characters you hate. And although that makes it really easy to read, with this series, it tests your own values. So while I read this book and I root for one player, my friends who have read this book root for another. But by doing this, Martin is able to show that things aren't black and white in the real life, and he really emphasizes that gray area because, for example, Cersei, on paper, she seems like this evil tyrant, but really it's just a testament to being a mother and that she would go to the ends of the world for her kids. And despite her disregard for humanity, it's her one redeeming quality is that she is a great mother. As for the genre, most young adult literature, it's really the label, the genre, or the subgenre, and many people, but that is not the case in this book. So many people might assume that the fantasy elements, such as the dragons and the ice walkers in the novels, are over dominant in this series. But honestly, George R. R. Martin does this very consciously, and he tries to make all the magic seem realistic and have boundaries, and he tries to subvert the convention. So he fuses genres such as metafiction, dystopian, sci-fi, political, feminist, romance, tragedy, and mystery all in one, which is honestly something I can say that I've never seen before in another book. Like I pointed out, there are 7 kingdoms, and each of them are represented symbolically through their sigil icon and their house words, which is displayed here on the screen right now. It's really cool to analyze how those elements are reflected and tone the characters. So Cersei, for example, she is a Lannister, so her sigil icon is the lion, and their motto is "Hear me roar," which is perfectly aligned with her characterization because she is this lioness mom who is ruthless. Each novel in the series tends to focus on one character for the most part, and obviously since this one is A Dance with Dragons, it really goes along with the dragon sigil, which is for the Targaryens, which was the original king's house. And in these symbolic icons, we're just meant to tone the characters. Now we are getting to see how these symbols are brought to life. Great affinity for this series, and especially A Dance with Dragons, because like this is the type of things I do in my free time. But honestly, the elements in these stories can just be dissected and analyzed, and each time you find something new. So I was very excited to talk about this today because this is something of and beyond anything that I've ever read before, that sometimes I wish that the television adapted version was never created, because I think it was so mainstream that it overcasted the novel's complexity and greatness. Martin has spent over 25 years creating this series, and this was the last one to come out in 2011, A Dance with Dragons. And supposedly, The Winds of Winter is supposed to come out before Christmas, fingers crossed. He has pushed back the deadline so many times, but according to his blog, there should be the next one coming out here shortly. If fantasy type genres don't really speak to you, I think George R.R. Martin did an effective job at creating a series that can be adorned by diverse reading interests, a legacy for himself by the way he crafted novels to be so thought-provoking in its layers and in philosophies and ethics.